Hello and welcome to another anime lore and theory video, and today we will take a closer look at the Dwarf Army of Overlord, and I will explain to you why they are really awesome and well thought out. And finally, there's also a full-length companion video about how a realistic dwarf army in general would look like down in the video description. But before we are going to take a closer look at any of this, let me quickly thank my Patreons for supporting this channel and say my thanks to all users of the YouTube thanks function for making one-time donations. And with that said, let's dive into the topic at hand. Now, the army of the dwarves is actually really good and fairly competent, despite it only being really relevant in just one single volume of Overlord. And let's start with the most obvious thing there is to note about it. It is made up of dwarves who lives in the mountains. So far so good. But the dwarf army actually behaves like a realistic army. It's not doing deadly mass infantry charges against disposable droids like the Grand Army of the Republic did in the Clone Wars, or the Dothraki did in the overproduced Game of Thrones fanfiction that we all should pretend still don't really exist, other than in myths and legends. Instead, it behaves smart and acts strategically. But I'm already getting a bit ahead of myself here. Let's start with the basic troops, which are just good old-fashioned dwarven infantrymen. They are strong, stout, and very stubborn defenders. And given the situation they are in, they actually act like defenders and are equipped like defenders, meaning they are not only clad head to toe in heavy armor, but they also wield spears. Now, this is something that the YouTubers Skalgrim and Shad from Shadiversity also pointed out, that dwarves would be at a major disadvantage when it comes to reach, due to their shorter size in general, but their low center of mass and their greater strength compared to the average human makes them excellent spearmen, especially if you add all of the weight the armor gives the dwarves in addition to his own quite strong body. This is the perfect basic unit for defense and to break up the charges of the demi-human moleman species known as Quagoa. They can actually keep them at bay with their spears, and have the advantage in reach compared to these mole men, who fight unarmed, relying on their sharp claws, teeth, and, importantly, their metal-rich body, for Quagoa ingest at a very critical moment in their youth, ores. And the harder the ore, the stronger and tougher the adult Quagoa will be. It seems like the organism of the young imitates the properties of these valuable ores, which results in tougher hide, claw, teeth, and a metallic pelt. And since Periuru promised the Quagoa warrior very rare ores, in proportion to their success on the battlefield, the Quagoa are willing and able to risk their lives, and if necessary, die for the greater good of their own family, which simultaneously furthers the greater good of the entire Quagoan state. This alignment is incredibly smart and makes the formerly divided tribal Quagoa into an immense and effective threat. But while their fur has a certain resistance to metal weapons, and their bodies are indeed strong, the metal makes the Quagoa also very prone to lightning-based damage, which is exactly what the Dwarven Mage Call uses. Not only does the dwarf incorporate spellcasters in their midst, but they also fire in volleys, like trained archers or crossbowmen do, to maximize the effect of their damage, which is another great way to break up a charge of incoming demi-humans. Basically, all the dwarf infantryman needs to do is to keep the Quagoa at bay, for casters to fry them. And even if they break through, they have a second line of defense that is comprised of dwarven greatsword men. And the reason why this is smart is because a greatsword still grants the dwarves a greater reach than the Quagoa, while the sword in turn allows to quickly and in succession attack enemies to either side of you, while the spear loses a lot of its damage potential once the enemy has run past its tip. It's possible that the spearmen would withdraw behind the lines in order to set up their spear formation again, only for the greatswordman to hold the line and then filter back after they stalled the enemy for long enough. And another thing I find awesome is that the dwarves make an actual use of choke points, since they are underground and since their tunnels are carved into the bedrock of the mountain. There's no easy way to outflank the dwarves in a tactical situation, hence why the Quagoa needed to utilize a strategic one, a secret passage to an abandoned dwarven city to circle around the defenders, which ultimately was unsuccessful because they have gotten interrupted by Solgon's elite force. But still, if all you can do is to pinpoint the defenders by letting your men charge into well-entrenched, lightning-wielding enemies, then it's quite a strong defense. And of course, these choke points are not just there, they are properly fortified. The casters, for example, have their own towers from which they can cast spells, while their lower bodies, all the way up to their chest, are still protected. And such a defensive wall does not exist on the backside of the tower, so even if the tower should fall, the Quagoa on top of it would be very vulnerable to ranged attacks. This is a great defensive design. Also, the Iron Gate really looks sturdy, and it has troops to either side of it, turning it, even in the case of a breach, into a kill zone. And finally, the dwarves are actually wearing helmets, aside from the two commanders who had to literally rush here, and thus had not the time to equip themselves properly. Even the absence of most heavy machinery like ballista or early black powder weapons make a lot of sense, since the dwarves are literally on their last city, and since the dwarves are on a defense for the better part of 2 centuries against the mole men like Quagoa, and since they lost city after city to them, to the evil deities, and to dragon battle, so they really can't set up an industrial complex on the scale necessary to produce the siege engines and the greater weapons of war in reliable quantities. Finally, these low numbers are also their biggest weakness. The Quagoa could just bring more men to bear, who could coordinate just as well as their enemies, and had more determination and vigor behind them, as the dwarves over the decades became too reliant and too sure about their own defensive positions, which almost spelled their certain doom after the Quagoa outflanked them on a strategic scale. But now that the dwarves entered an alliance with Solgon, the undead sorcerer king, now that they have access to his skeletons to do manual labor like mining or building, the dwarves can quickly recover and repopulate their former cities that Solgon, as part of the alliance, has personally cleansed of hostiles. So, the future Dwarf Army will likely also incorporate undead elite troops like Death Knights or Death Warriors amongst their ranks, as Death Knights have proven to be rather effective, if they not fall to their certain death. And with that said, now it's your turn. What are your thoughts on the Dwarven Army in Overlord? Let me know your opinion down in the comment section. And while you type, let me quickly remind you that there's a full-length companion video waiting for you on my fantasy channel. It's linked down in the video description. And finally, let me say thank you for watching and special thanks to Arder Daddy Arder, ASK, Bad Guy Yi, Bad Burrito 316, Beezer, Ben C, Brandon D, Chrissy, Crowley 0221, Sia, Crystal Prime, Dead Slime, Death is Mercy, Deathless Dragonlord, Demon Xenomorph 1987, Devin Downen, Ding Dong, Dragonlord Placidu Saxophone, Duckwagon, Dunkler Krieger, Dystopia II, Enigmatic Unicorn, Feral Shivan, Guy with That Head, Hector Marino, Hoss, Huster, Jacob G, Jana B, Jason, J. Morris, Chromius, Kyle R, Lee K. Long, Legendarius, Le Louche Britannia with a Mustache, Lexus Fox, Lord Nishikian Rai, Lord Touch Me, Love Razor, Merovec, Mr. Shoes, Mr. Tweaker, Michael R, Michael Y, Nope, Oh Hell No, Normal Toad, Oh Kill, Overlord General Gasper, Paddy Pantum, Personage, Primus 11, Rhinomere, Cune Carcos P, Shangox's Daddy, Shadow Lightning Wolf, Shrine Keeper, Super Tier Magic Batista Bomb, Supreme Cheese, Staris, Ted, Texas Deer, The Orc Warboss, Rock Ed Smasher, T.E. Wang, Vash Hawkeye, Vegito 27, Venture Fanatic, Wilhelm, Xenokai, and Zonagon. Thanks guys. And anyway, have a nice day and I see you all again soon on my next video.